Welcome to another episode of the Coastal Controversial Podcast. I'm your host, Simply Nicholas87, and my co-hosts are with me, T Harden and Mr. D Ron 2000. What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Hey man, glad to be here.
Hey, man, as y'all know, we hit our goal of 100 subscribers,
Yes,
and
sir.
I
Yes,
appreciate you guys for joining me on the journey. Couldn't have done it without y'all. It takes a lot, to
likewise.
do something like this, man. So,
And glad to be a part of it, man. I was honored that you even considered me to be a part of all this.
oh yeah, man. If I'm gonna do something right, I'm gonna do it the right way. You know.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Do it
sir.
Absolutely.
the right, do it the right way. And now, we on that 100 mark. Let's keep going. Let's keep growing. Let's get to this next goal with 200, man. So, all the new people out there, if y'all ain't subscribed, y'all go ahead and hit that like button and like the video on your way in, man. We got a lot to talk about, man. I first want to go ahead and congratulate the Milwaukee Bucks for winning the second NBA championship in franchise history, first time since 1971.
Yep. With
Uh,
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson.
Robinson with the big O.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that was quite a sight to see. Also, before we get started, it's my mom's birthday today. She's blowing out 67 candles. So, wish my mom happy birthday.
Happy
So
birthday,
enjoy.
Mr. Harden.
Yeah. On a sadder note, Nick and our classmate Ben McCluster passed away. I'm sure Nick knew Ben. I knew Ben McCluster as well. Class of 2006. He was a wonderful guy, comical guy, easygoing fellow. So definitely saddened to hear about the death of our classmate. That was never fun or happy to hear anything like that. Man, such a young age who we knew in school and stuff. So condolences to Ben McCluster's family. May God rest his soul. Class of 2006, he'll be surely missed. And in the wrestling community, since we last convened here, we lost Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff as well. That's also a big loss for the wrestling community. So also condolences to the fans and family and friends of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
Absolutely.
Condolences to everybody in this trying time. Hate to see things like that go on. All you can do is pray for the family.
Yeah. And Jimbo, I'm not Jimbo Fisher, but Bobby Bowden also announced today that he has a terminal illness as well. A legendary Florida State former head coach, 91 years old. So, I mean, he's lived a good life, but nevertheless, you're never happy to hear of such. So, you know, wishing the best for Mr. Bobby Bowden, legend, the one that put that Florida State program on the map, and very saddening to hear about his situation as well.
Prayers to all the families of those that's lost or going through anything.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
All right, fellas. Let's get into tonight's topic. As we know, like I said, starting the show, congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks on winning their second NBA championship in franchise history. First one since 1971 with the Big O and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Uh, my take on the series. Well, I'm gonna start from. I guess I want to start from game. I'm starting from game one, where it looked like Phoenix was pretty much in control of Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know if they the defense wasn't set or Devin Booker was on fire and it looked like it was gonna be a sweep at first. At first, I mean, 2 games in, anything can happen, right? Anything can
Yeah.
happen. When a big shift turnaround in game three, uh, it's like the floodgates opened up and Milwaukee went running and they never stopped running. Hauled off 4 straight wins to end up winning the series in six. So
Yeah.
my thoughts on this, considering that I looked at some of the stat lines from most of the games, that Milwaukee shot very poorly from three and somewhat poorly from the field, but somehow managed to win those games. What's your take on that?
Well, they're an aggressive team, and they're an old school team that attacks the basket. A lot of times when you attack the basket, good things happen. You're going to get to the line, And it's kind of like special teams in football, like the hidden yardage. That's kind of where the hidden points come from when you're attacking the basket, getting to the foul line. So even if your shot's not falling, you stay aggressive. You're still able to find a way to score points. As far as when the series turned, I think it was game three. Phoenix was not game three, excuse me, game four. Phoenix was in control of game four through a good portion of the game, and Milwaukee rallied back and won to tie the series up. That would have been a 3-1 series if Phoenix would have held on. I always say when a team has home court advantage, when they win the first two games at home, you can't panic because of that because you know you're going to the other team's venue for two games. So it's one of those series where first four games, two teams are even match. You got to realize first two games in Phoenix. A lot of times when you're home like that, you're going to get the benefit of the whistle. Things are going to go your way, and they won the first two games. Milwaukee came back home, took care of their building. You're even. Most time in the series like that, where teams are even match, the pendulum swings in that pivotal game five. And in that game five, Phoenix came out hot, jumped up on a 16-point lead, and they were riding the emotion of the game. But as the game got settled in and Milwaukee locked in defensively and got their bearings, they seized control of the game. And down the stretch of that game, they made some plays as Phoenix was trying to rally back. And when held on to win the game, take a 3-2 lead, you could even argue even in game six, Phoenix competed really hard in game six, had a lead at halftime. And the difference in game six is Giannis Antetokounmpo just put the game on his back. In that third quarter, he just took over the game, and the way he was attacking the basket, even his fadeaway jumpers and everything, his mid-range jumper was falling. He at that point was just determined that I think he looked at that as game seven. I guess it seemed like he took that game like this is game seven. I'm going to take over this now. We can't afford to play around. Let's go ahead and get this over with. And that's kind of how and the team kind of followed suit as when he took over. They followed their leader, and that's when they settled in and was able to win a competitive game, which clinched the series.
Right.
I would say two main things to me that stuck out, especially to change the narrative of the series, was tempo. The tempo definitely changed where Milwaukee decided to play both ends of the ball. They wasn't the greatest offensively, but they made big plays when it came down to shots, inside scoring, especially hustle points and things of that nature. They definitely changed the played a different way by hustling on both ends.
Especially Drew Holiday's defense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
defense that game six, they bring me to a good point. That play at the end of the game six, well, it was five, sorry, not six, where he stole the ball from Devin Booker and ran out of court, and they found Giannis for the alley oop. I mean, that was a pivotal point to show you that like they were determined. Like you said, they looked at it every game they played after the 2-0 going up, beating down 2-0. They looked at it. That was
Game
it.
seven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every game they took that tenacity and fueled in each game they played the last 4 games. So they showed us definitely with the tempo. I would say to me, Money. The Suns coach. I think he kind of let them down, my opinion, because a lot of teams play Giannis differently in the playoffs, past series, and they just let him do him, and thinking that they were able to capitalize on the other guys, and that didn't work out for their favor to me, opinion wise. They let Giannis do him, which he proved like you're gonna let me do me, I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna give you 41 here this game, and like last night, the stats 50, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks, free throws, 17 from 19 at the free throw line. I mean,
Yeah.
He's not even a good free throw shooter at that.
I mean, that right there shows you like you can't let a player like that thinking that he's going to have a inconsistent night go off because he's determined. Like that's it. This was the year for him. I put it this way. He was determined like it's championship or bust, So I didn't think that Phoenix went into it with a big head going up 2-0 and they let off the gas pedal.
And I'll say this too. On top of that, with that being said, I mean, Giannis was the MVP. No, let's not get that. Just not get that misconstrued. But you got to give credit to Bobby Portis, who played a heck of a game last night. Even though he didn't have, I think he had like 16, but he made some good shots down the stretch. Uh, Drew Holiday made a couple good shots down the stretch.
Played great defense too. I mean,
Yeah,
Holiday did.
real good defense.
Middleton.
Uh, yeah, Middleton made a key shot. I think it was round about I want to say it was under the 6 minute mark. He made a pretty good clutch too. Uh, I looked at Phoenix's defense like, even though y'all gonna give Giannis all these points, Aiden had to be big. I don't know what Aiden had going on. How in the world Cotton out rebounded you and Crowder?
Yep.
Don't know.
Six
Like,
seven. You 6'7" player
yeah,
out
Yeah,
hustle you on the boards. That's no excuse.
yeah, that's true. But on the same token, as far as the matchup concerned, it's not like I mean, Aiden had a Brook Lopez on the other side, who's a solid center himself. It's not like he was playing against a team that plays small ball where he would just
right.
dominate. And he's a good center, but I'm talking about it's not like he's not Shaquille O'Neal. So let's not
Oh
I
no,
don't.
no.
He's not a guy where you just throw the ball down there and just and watch him work. He's not that kind of guy. He's a good player. He's a guy that could probably give you 16 points, 10 rebounds, that kind of guy. But he's not the dominant guy that commands a double team or anything like that. Still a young guy too. I don't necessarily put the hands of the series on him. I think the biggest issue is Phoenix struggled with ball pressure, and when they switched Drew Holiday and put him on Paul, that ball pressure on him forced a lot of turnovers, and that's where the series swung. They got to where they're turning the ball over a lot, and that defensive pressure they didn't let them get in their rhythm and didn't let them get in their spots. And once that turned, that's what I think caused things to swing a little bit. And that's when, after Milwaukee got home, got a couple of wins under their belt, they were able to catch their bearings. And I think that adjustment, the series changed when Holiday locked in defensively. In that game, and on the road, that game 5, Holiday also shot well. Holiday was the one who picked the tempo up and changed the flow of the game. And I think his tenacity on both sides of the floor is what won that game 5. Then in that game 6, they were down, but Antetokounmpo just took over the game because nobody was at that time. Middleton wasn't hitting, Holiday wasn't hitting, nobody was hitting at that time, and you could see because they were down by maybe 6 or 7 points, and Antetokounmpo just took the game over. He just did what a superstar does, put his head down, and just took over. And when he was as aggressive as I've ever seen him. And when he went with that aggression, then other guys follow suit. That's when your Porter shot well anyway, but then he started following suit. Lopez hit a few buckets to get going, and that's when some of the other guys followed suit. So I'll say that yes, those other guys contributed, but their superstar is the one who got things rolling when he put it on his back and said, "Guys, follow me, and I'm going to take us there." And that's what a superstar does. He took them to the finish line and got them across the finish line.
Also, like I noticed last night too, that Phoenix missed a lot of wide open shots and a lot of second
And,
chance opportunities as well.
and fast breaks, easy fast breaks.
Yeah,
Well,
With it,
and
they're a slow tempo team though. When you got a 36-year-old point guard, and I'm not he had a great season, and the primary reason that they made the run they made, so I'm not taking anything away from him. But when you have a 36-year-old point guard, you're not going to be a fast paced team, so your tempo is gonna be slower. And to a team that likes to play a good half court defensive team that plays to their favor. Uh, as far as um, as far as missing shots, when your legs are gone, like as you get this deep to the season, especially on the road, sometimes your shots just don't fall. So make or miss league. They still, it's not like they got blown. They were still in the game until the very end. The game went down to the wire. The 7 point
yeah.
margin. You had a 7 point margin because at the end we had to foul people as the clock was going down. But it was still just a 2 to 4 point game with just ticks like even with 50 seconds and stuff left. I mean the game went right down to the wire. Just that the difference in the game is one difference in the game, and it may look like hindsight now, but my man went 17 of 19 from the line. And if you could also argue if he shot his normal percentage that he was shooting from the line, that's
It'd
seven
be
or eight
different.
points that
Yeah.
would be off the board, and the complexity of the game would be different. That's another element of the superstar stepping up and even going above and beyond doing things that he normally wouldn't do because those are points that ordinarily he went 16 of 7. He went, what did you say, 17 of 19 from the line, so that's 17 points from the line.
Right.
Ordinarily, he might if he would shot 19 free throws. Ordinarily, he might would have hit 10 of them.
10,
So
Right.
so that's about 7 points that you're swinging off. Now you're talking about some of that time down the stretch, like when they were up by 6, you could say they would have been down by 1. So that also changes the complexity of the game as well. So even though it's not something that just stands out when you just look at the raw numbers, that's why things like the simple things, free throw shooting, turnovers, and those kind of things, it sounds cliche, but those things are different in ball games. They might not stand out, or they might not be flashy as a 3-point shot. But those things, that's when they say death by 10,000 paper cuts. Like when you throw that ball out of bounds or a guy mishandles the ball and you lose a possession like that, those things add up. And it's just like a paper cut, but eventually if you get too many paper cuts, you bleed out. So those little things like that we think nothing of when we're watching the game. As time goes on in the game, those things accumulate, and those things can be the difference in the ball game. And it was just those little things like that were taken care of.
Yeah,
um,
I agree.
like with Bobby Portis, they go off that too. Like big players stepping up for Milwaukee. Bobby Portis. I don't know if y'all guys familiar with Lethal Shooter. He's a shooting coach. You
Hmm.
know, and Bobby Portis, over time, he probably had issue with teams that he was on before, but I commend him the way he approached this year, especially getting picked up and being on Milwaukee. He worked on his game. And like last night, wanting to play, wanting to win, wanting to be more pivotal in the game showed with his dedication. And I would say that is probably what was the biggest determining factor for Milwaukee this year, was determination on all scales for every player that's on the team. Not only Giannis, Middleton, Drew Holiday getting on the team to where he can probably be more of a factor. Where on teams past, like when he was drafted for Philadelphia, going to New Orleans, and I'm sure it's another team that he was on too, but he was a good player. That is,
Philadelphia, New Orleans.
Yeah.
That's on 2 teams he played for.
yeah, it just he was a big factor, but it just didn't stand out to where it made them more viable,
Well,
like they were last
well,
night as a
well,
team.
that's one of my biggest criticisms of Anthony Davis. You got to realize he played that whole time down there with Anthony Davis. One of those years they had him, Anthony Davis, and Julius Randle, and
Yeah,
everyone was screaming Anthony Davis is the franchise player. Anthony Davis is the franchise player. You could take a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, you could take a guy like Anthony Davis, guys who are roughly the same size, same build. The game's a little different because actually Anthony Davis is considered the more versatile offensive player. But
yep,
if you look at when Anthony Davis was in New Orleans, he had Drew Holiday the majority of that time down there. A couple of those years he had Julius Randle. Some of those years he had Eric Gordon. He had good players around him, and still they would never make the playoffs. They made the playoffs twice in the entire 7-year span,
yeah,
the however many years that he was there, and won one playoff series. Had Rajon Rondo down there too. So I'm about to
yep,
say he had players around him and never could get it done, but people always act like he was a superstar. That's that same Drew Holiday that's paired with that's there with the Bucks now, and look at what they're doing. Even when Drew Holiday was in Philadelphia, he actually the one All Star he actually made was in Philadelphia when he and Lou Williams and who else they had? Iguodala was still in Philadelphia then. They had a
yeah,
young team. They had a young team. Then I know Derrick Rose got hurt. But that was when they beat Chicago in the first round, and they lost to Boston in 7 in the
7, yeah,
second round that year. And then the next year they traded him for Nerlens Noel, which was a dumb move. But that's when they were
Movie.
trust. That's when they were trusting the process. New Orleans drafted Nerlens Noel and traded him for Holiday. So I mean, Holiday's always been a good player. It's just that down there in New Orleans, you didn't see him because they weren't winning a lot. And
yeah,
and and to me, that shows the difference even between a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo versus a guy like Anthony Davis of what a superstar and a franchise player actually does. Like, well, one, he puts up astronomical numbers year in and year out, but it doesn't impact the team. The same way DeMarcus Cousins put up astronomical numbers year in and year out, but couldn't win any more than 35 games a year. So that being a superstar is more than putting up numbers. It's also making everyone else around you better as well and elevating your team. And that's the difference between a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo versus other guys who put up numbers, but it doesn't impact the game.
Right.
yeah. I mean, I would say that I say this series right here kind of answers a lot of questions about these super teams, these players, and how their legacies are going to be going forward. I will say that. That's my opinion. But Giannis just definitely set the bar that any other superstar hasn't set, probably since Jordan, maybe, where he didn't have to have that third quintessential like superstar. I mean, of course, they drafted Pippen, and he became a superstar. Not
He was an all star. I wouldn't call him a superstar. He
not
was
like
an all star.
not well at the time you would probably consider it, not in this day and time, but more so then paired with Jordan, they was a duo. But like with Giannis having Middleton and like I said, Drew Holiday, good players, good all-star players. And from that token, they went out there and won. So to me, I like to see that more than these super teams.
Yeah. To the on that same token, you could say the same thing about that 2011 Dallas Mavericks team, where the Dirk Nowitzki was the only All NBA player on that team. Um, I think on them Spurs teams with Tim Duncan, especially those last few,
He was a good
Duncan was
player.
the yeah, he was the only all because Parker and Ginobili never made an All NBA team. Duncan was the only All NBA player on those teams, so it could be done. Same thing with the Houston Rockets with Olajuwon.
One,
He was
yeah.
yeah, that first one. I mean, the second one they brought Drexler in mid-season, but on that first one, they
It
didn't
was just
have
him.
any. Yeah, I mean, you had people like Mario Elie and Kenny Smith in your backcourt, and had people like Otis
Vernon
Thorpe, Vernon Max looking on
and
the bench, and people like Otis Thorpe and Robert Ory as your forwards. So and they won back-to-back titles with that team. So it's just that now guys don't want the grind. It's like everybody seem to be
well,
on that buddy thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's why you have a lot of that Giannis hate from the league because he's not one of those guys who click up with the other guys. I remember about 3 years ago. This is before the Bucks emerged as a contender. This was back when they were like a 7 seed or something like that. And LeBron James wanted to work out with Giannis during the offseason. And I remember he said no, he doesn't work out with guys he compete against. And I love that old school mentality because I'll never forget when Miami beat Oklahoma City in the championship. And 2 months later, James and Durant were working out together after James's team beat Durant's team in the championship. So I love the dude's competitive spirit. He has that old school vibe about him, where it's not like I'm clicked up and buddied up with all the guys. And don't get me wrong, like I get like Magic Johnson and the guy who's played with Detroit, Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas were off the court were the best of
the
buddies. But
friends, yeah.
once that ball got tipped in the air, all that went out
Yeah,
the
that was
window.
it.
Yeah, and they wasn't like they were trying to click up or link up together. It's not like they Magic was wanting to sign with the Bulls and Isaiah was wanting to go with them, and so where Jordan was already there. You didn't hear talk of that because the guys were competitors at that time. Even though Magic and Isaiah were buddies, when they got on the court, man, it would almost come to blows because they were still competitors. Whereas I remember a couple of years ago, Cleveland had a night off and this is during the middle of the regular season. Cleveland just had a night off, and James flew down to Miami to the Heat facility, and was practicing with James and practicing with Wade in the middle of the season. Now I'm like, and there's no disrespect to LeBron James, is a great player, arguably the best player in the game still, even at his age. But that's not appropriate. I'm talking in the middle of the regular season to be at another organization's facility working out with one of their players in the middle of the season, and whether it's your friend or not, that's not appropriate. So,
No, it's
but
not.
that,
And that
that,
was oh, you good, you good. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the thing about them super teams, man. I mean, I get it. Everybody's doing it now. Let's buddy, let's join up. But if you ain't got the chemistry, we already seen this happen. Injuries can happen. Chemistry may not work at the time it needs to work. Look at Brooklyn. It was shown
Clippers,
this year.
Clippers.
And the Clippers got hit by the injury bug this year. Last year they choked.
Yeah,
They
they went
choked
They
last
choked.
year.
They choked in the bubble this year.
yeah,
Kawhi Leonard towards the ACL, even though they kept
uh,
that part a secret.
but
So
like injuries, like say injuries, even with the Lakers with AD, he wasn't, and even LeBron probably wasn't 100%.
Nah, they said LeBron said he wasn't 100%. He already put his like he can put that out in public. Like I'm not
he,
gonna be 100%.
I and I don't like that. The reason why I don't like that because if you're a great player doesn't announce to everybody that I'm hurt, especially if you're out there playing. Like I always tell people, LeBron James arguably is the most talented guy we've ever seen graze the court. But when people compare him to the all-time greats, when you think of Michael Jordan or whoever you want to compare him to, the difference is that competitive spirit. I'll always say that he doesn't have the competitive spirit
Yep.
of a Jordan, and people get mad when I say that. But what I mean by that is that, like in a situation like that, to me, that's like you're putting it out there. So just in case if we fall short, I'm already putting an excuse out there ahead of time.
Yeah,
See,
that's
I
also
don't.
an excuse. It's a definitely
Yeah,
excuse to say, "Oh, if it wasn't for this, then we would have been there." You know what I mean? Like,
right. And then he's always playing GM. It's always like I want this guy, I want that guy. We don't have enough. We don't even in that second run in Cleveland back when during the time when he and Kevin Love and Irving and all them in there. I think this is after Irving had left and they brought in the other Isaiah Thomas when after his hip had already gone bad. And at the time they had the highest payroll in the league. And he was complaining about David Griffin not spending enough. And at the time they had the highest cap figure in all of the league, highest payroll in the league. And that's when Sir Charles was like this dude is the best player in the world and he doesn't want to compete. And then he took it
I
personal
agree.
and got in his feelings about it. He was like he always wants to be the favorite. He always wants to have all the best weapons and all the star the other. He wants to have the best players in the league alongside of him. Always pretend playing GM and always recruiting, trying to get another star player in there with him. And it's like and anytime he falls short, it seems like that's what he's trying to do. That's not to take away from his talent and take away his ability, but as far as his competitive spirit, he doesn't have the competitive spirit that a Jordan, a Bryant, a Johnson, and the real Isaiah, not the little pipsqueak who's played with Celtics, or like an Isaiah Thomas. He doesn't, an Elijah on any of those guys. He doesn't have. He doesn't. What you laughing about? He doesn't have the competitive spirit that those guys have. Even a Tim Duncan, he was a silent assassin.
yeah,
You never heard anything out of him. You didn't hear him crying and complaining all the time. They just went out there and got it done. And he didn't have superstar players with him. He didn't have any All NBA players with him. Tony Parker was the second best player on those teams. David Robinson had one foot in the grave and on that first one, and on those first two. So he was getting old. And then the other ones, Manu Ginobili was a $6 million a year type guy, not a franchise player. Tony Parker, a very good player, a guy who was an All Star but not an All NBA type guy. And Duncan still won 5 championships, 4 of them where he was definitively the guy on. So the excuses when it comes, because even when it comes to James, I'm a Lakers fan, so I still root for him now because he plays for the Lakers. But even you look at James has won 4 championships. I don't take anything away of him. We know the first 2 were undoubtedly on super teams. We had 2 of the top 10 or top 8 players in the league. You can say all 3 guys, 3 cornerstone players on the team were top 8 players in the league. Him, Wade, and Chris Bosh in his prime before all the blood clots and all that stuff,
Right.
all on the same team. They had no business but to win 2 championships. They played together 4 years. And the fact that they lost in the finals twice, I'm not even going to deal with the Ray Allen shot and stuff or the other one they should have lost. I'm just dealing with what happened. That team was together 4 years and lost in the finals twice. That should have never happened. A team that stacked, they should have never lost to Dallas. They were superior talent to Dallas, and they should have never lost to San Antonio the second time.
Nah, they
Yeah,
definitely lost
and they
second.
and they and that second time they lost San Antonio in 5 games. So I don't want to hear it. Then he goes back to when he goes back to Cleveland. You got a young rising star in Irving there, and then you bring in another All Star player, Kevin Love, there with him. That's still adequate talent around him as well. I'll give him credit. That one when they did beat Golden State, that was incredible. Down 3-1 against 73 win team.
Yeah.
He and Irving were both big in that series, and to go on the road and win a game 7, and he made impact plays in that. I'll give him credit last year with the Lakers. I'm biased on that, but he and Davis, because that Lakers team was not that talented and not that deep, and he and Davis pretty much carried the weight of that team and won a championship last year. So I mean, I'll give him his due credit where it's due, but I can say that out of his 4 championships, 3 of them he was on stacked teams, and so I
I
don't.
agree.
When people say the greatest ever, I'm sitting there like he's always put himself in the most favorable possible situation where he doesn't have to have any kind of adversity at all. It's almost like where I've stacked the cards where everything is in our favor, where I don't have to do as much because I got superior talent around me. I'm not knocking the man for wanting to play with good players, but when you're saying you're the greatest ever, and then had the audacity to say that when they came back from 3-1 that made him the greatest. Typically, when someone is the greatest, you don't have to go out the way to remind somebody all the time. So for my good friend Sean Wheeler and some of the other guys out here, my good friend Freddie Dean, I love both of you guys. You're great guys, great fathers, and great human beings, and just great men of God overall. I like Freddie Dean and Sean Wheeler. I hope you listen to this. But guys, hear me out. if someone is the greatest, you don't have to every day go out of the way to try to prove it because the resume speaks for itself. The thing is, James has fans. The thing about James is so dichotomous. You got the people who hate him, who won't give him credit for anything, who tries to say that he ain't this, he ain't that. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you got the fans who act like it's God, Jesus, and then LeBron, where it's like he could do no wrong or he's just perfect and that nobody comes ahead of him. And it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know why we can't just sit here and say that, hey, he's a great player, probably the greatest player of his generation, and maybe the most talented guy we ever seen. However, when you look at the total body of work, we know his individual numbers and stuff there. But when it comes to elevating a team, that most of the time it's not like he ever picked the team up. It's well, I'm not going to say that. Those early Cleveland teams didn't have a whole lot, and he still
No.
had them and had them and had them in contention. So I want to correct myself. But I'm talking about at the point when he was winning championships, it's not like he was picking teams up winning championships. He stacked all the cards in his favor and had everything, all the resources in the world that he needed, and to get himself in position to win those championships. So and that's where I say that he doesn't have the competitive spirit to be called the greatest of all time.
I agree with that, and I'm glad you said that too. Because now I want to say like, okay, now that Giannis has his title on his belt, he has a Finals MVP. I mean, should he get some sort of validation now?
He
Because I mean, like,
definitely.
he should definitely get some sort of the performance he put on last night, God knows it was good. You
Yeah,
couldn't do nothing but
Absolutely,
poop on him.
and they
I
need.
say this might have been the best finals performance we ever seen.
I think
Yeah,
that's reasonable. And what I'll say of those 50 points he scored, 49 of those 50 they needed every bit of those 49. It's not like that he scored them. It's not like he was scoring some in garbage time. Out of the 50, one of the free throws he hit was the game was pretty much over. But 49 of them points they needed every single one of those 49. 49 of those 50 points were absolutely needed and necessary. And the game was in the balance when he scored 49 of those 50.
and then with
So I
that
mean,
50 points, that puts him in great company with I think he's like 1 out of 7 players to score 50 points in the NBA Finals. I think it was
yeah,
Oscar Robinson, Michael Jordan,
and
Jerry
And
West.
Michael LeBron.
Was
yeah,
yeah,
and the only one in a game clinching, I think, to do so. I think that's what they said in a series clinching, and finals series clinching game to do so. And at the time he started cranking up, his team was down, so it's the game was tight. So I mean, they needed every one of them. So it's not like they were up by 20 and he was just lighting it up. They needed those points.
yeah, because
They were
going
down,
like you
and
said, ending the third quarter, they were tied up 77 apiece. I think, if I ain't mistaken.
yes, they were. And a lot of his teammates hadn't caught fire either. So I mean, he put that on his shoulders. So that was a great. And people like Kendrick Perkins, and I'm glad Kendrick Perkins acknowledged him last night because Kendrick Perkins has been one of his biggest haters. I think what it is, his game is not aesthetically pleasing. It's not. It okay. It like for example, Kevin Durant's game is pretty. Kevin Durant has this pretty finesse game. Like it's when you watch Kevin Durant, it's just pleasing to the eyes. It's just like it's Kevin Durant has a George Gervin like silky smoothness to his game. It's like a six
Mhm.
foot ten. He's like a 6'10" George Gervin offensively. His game is just smooth, and even when he drops the basket, it's like he's gliding on air. And it's just pretty to watch. Whereas Giannis's game it's a brute. Giannis has a brute aggression. He's more like a freight train slash bulldozer type who just puts his head down and attacks. And it's not pretty to watch. He's not standing out there shooting threes. And I think with the style that the game is played now, where you got a bunch of guys being cute out there on the perimeter, and now you got this guy who's kind of this throwback 90s style player. A lot of people don't like it because it doesn't fit the mold. It's like he's like the outsider who doesn't belong. I'm telling his game is like the game of an outsider who doesn't belong. And lots of times we have the tendency to reject the outsider, and as long as he fails, we can justify saying why he doesn't belong as long as he fails. But what bothered me about it is during this postseason when things would go well, then you hear Stephen A. and Kendrick and stuff say, well, it's because of Middleton. Middleton's the Batman and Giannis is the Robin, which was absolute silliness from the get go. But it seemed like they were so hell bent on not giving this guy credit. They wanted him to fail so bad. So when he wasn't failing, they moved the goalpost and would say, well, yeah, they didn't fail, but it was because of the other guy, not him. Now they're left with nothing to say, but as Roman Reigns would say, acknowledge him.
Yeah, knowledge. And
Acknowledging he's at the head
you,
of the table.
yeah, you can't take away nothing that man's done. Now I'm gonna say this, and it's my opinion. And now that I look at it, that man was loyal to that team. He proving that he wasn't going to join a super team to win a championship. Regardless if they didn't go this year, I think he would have stayed up until his contract was up, and maybe they would have worked something out. But you can
Well,
tell that
they just signed him to an extension this past off season. He signed a 5-year extension.
Yeah,
yeah,
made it.
yeah, yeah, I get that. But what I'm saying is like, regardless if they didn't say if they necessarily didn't win it this year, and maybe they won it maybe a few years down the road. I don't think his intentions of him leaving. I don't think whatever that rumor that came out about him leaving. I don't think that was ever true.
Not neither do I. What happened when he sprained his ankle last year against Miami? Whatever. By the way, I'm not making an excuse. Miami was already up 3-0 when he got hurt, so I want to make that clear. And it's not. I'm not blaming his injury on the loss to Miami last year. But after he sprained his ankle against Miami, and people like he quit on this team, he's gone. He ain't coming back. DeAndre Johnson. I hope you're listening to this. DeAndre Johnson from Wingate, former Forest Hill Yellow Jacket assistant football coach at Advanced High School, Julius Chambers High School. I hope you're listening to this. I remember on your Facebook, DeAndre, please be listening to this. I'm going to tag you if you didn't. On your Facebook, you and I got into a debate last year after he sprained his ankle. You could tell he's gone. He quit on his team. He's gone and he's leaving. And then a month later, he signed an extension. And now a year, not even quite a year later, because the finals was in October. 10, 11, 10, 8, 10 months later, the guy's hoisting up the Larry O'Brien trophy and hoisting up the Bill Russell Finals MVP trophy. So he's not only did he stay, he also, the very first year under his new extension, he fulfilled the promise that he made. And so you have to acknowledge him. That's the only thing I can say at this point about him. I mean, he's done what everyone said he couldn't do. And the thing about it, as far as that concerned, he did what Kevin Durant couldn't do in Oklahoma City. And if you want to talk about what he had, Kevin Durant had Russell Westbrook, who went on to be a league MVP, James Harden, who wasn't a superstar at the time, but was still a six man of the year and went on to become a supposed superstar after he left there, a very talented guy. You could say at that time, James Harden is still in the same vein of what Drew Holiday is today. And you could say that Russell Westbrook is ahead of what Chris Middleton is considered today. And even then, they got to the finals and lost and couldn't get it done. And then years later, got back to West Finals, blew a 3-1 lead to Golden State, who then blew a 3-1 lead the next series. And then he left and went to that 73 win team who won a title the season before, a couple of not that season, but the season before then, and joined the back-to-back MVP and another All NBA player. The former the super team with him did a one championship just 2 seasons prior to his getting there, and he won 73 games, got to the finals the year before, and that's something. So he's done at this stage in his career what Kevin Durant couldn't do, and Kevin Durant couldn't do it, and eventually ran away and went to the most favorable situation humanly possible for him. Did what LeBron James couldn't do, and when LeBron James in Cleveland that second time, I mean that first run, and toward when he first got there didn't have anything, but Zydrunas Ilgauskas was still just as good of a center as Brook Lopez is, and was a two-time All-Star in his own right, a solid center. Got to do 15, 17 a game. Zydrunas Ilgauskas was just as good as Brook Lopez. Similar comparison. Brook maybe a little bit better as far as shooting from the perimeter, but they're Zydrunas Ilgauskas and Brook Lopez have been in the same category. Mo Williams was a productive player. He would be in the same vein as Drew Holiday. They're as far as Mo Williams at that time, B-list All-Star, kind of like Drew Holiday, same type player. One of those years they had Antoine Jameson. They won 66 games one year. That's when they had Shaq there. Then the next year, or that might have been the year before Shaq got there. Then Shaq was washed up when they got there. They brought in Antoine Jameson, who still was a B-list All-Star with the Wizards. And they brought in the middle of the season, guy who still on the season averaged 17, 18 points a game. Not saying he was a superstar, but my point is they still won 61 games in one year and 66 games the year before. The year they won 66 games, they lost in the East Finals to the Orlando Magic, who wasn't a bit more talented. They were led by Dwight Howard, who's today, I wish these kids could have seen him in his prime, because today he's someone who's laughed at. But they had Dwight Howard, the second best player, you could say maybe Rashard Lewis and Hedo Turner.
Definitely Rashard Lewis.
Right, but my point is, Rashard Lewis was not considered a superstar. He's a fringe, like B-list All-Star in the same vein as Antoine Jameson, maybe even lower. Hedo Turkoglu, solid player, but not considered a star player. They had Ray for Austin, but they had Jameer Nelson, who played well, who been in the same vein as Mo Williams. He got hurt, and they had Ray for Austin, a dang on and one street baller. playing point guard for him, and still beat that Cleveland team, even though Cleveland had home court advantage of them. And as far as if you look at the talent level, the talent of that Orlando team that Dwight Howard had wasn't like it was star studded anymore, star studded Cleveland team. But when it comes to James' shortcomings, there are always excuses made. He ended up running away too, and joining Wade and recruiting Bosch to form a super team. So at this stage in his career, year 8, Giannis did what LeBron couldn't do. LeBron didn't win his first championship until he formed a super team. Durant didn't win his first championship until he joined a super team.
Yep.
This guy, year 8, age 26, has already at this stage of his career has already done what those guys haven't done and didn't have to take shortcuts to do it. Acknowledge him.
I'm acknowledge some of the chat, man. I missed some of these comments. Yo, shout out to TJ for coming through, man, showing the podcast some love. Appreciate
TJ
you,
Ledbetter
brother.
or
Yeah,
Simon? Oh,
TJ
Ledbetter.
Ledbetter. Yeah.
All the way from Arizona.
Yes,
It's
sir.
4:42. It's 4:42 over there. He might still be at work.
Appreciate you, man, for coming through, brother. And I think CM had a question. How is an athlete with amazing footwork not pretty to watch and almost 7 foot?
You know what? Let me answer that. CM Punk, aka I know who you are now, Mister Bus Garage, Bogan Cut Road or whatever. Um, when I say not pretty to watch, I don't like for guys like us. We appreciate him. When I say pretty to watch, I'm talking about like stylistically. Like for example, some guys they have a finesse style. Like for example, if you compare Shaquille O'Neal to Hakeem Olajuwon's game is pretty. Like when you watch, he looked like a ballerina out there. He put guys on skates and just had pretty moves. Where Shaquille O'Neal was more brute and forceful. That's what I mean. With Giannis's game is more brute, forceful game, whereas a Durant's game is a silky smooth finesse game. That's what I mean by that. So I'm not trying to say that he's sloppy or anything like that. I'm just saying that his game has more force and brute to it versus more smoothness and finesse to it. That's all I meant by that.
Cool. Uh, what I was gonna say is, since we talked about the Milwaukee Bucks and we've clarified that Giannis deserves some sort of respect now. I want to get into the other team, the team that blew the league. You know, I don't like making memes, but some of these memes that came out today quite hilarious. You had this one, and
Yeah, I saw that.
then you also
That's
had this one.
Let me
all
say
right.
this: the debate to say Devin Booker is a superstar has been determined.
Tournament year.
Well, I never thought he was a superstar. You got to realize we've talked about this. He's a very
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I mean, some people are still saying it. Now we had that conversation, but
I remember he's in to me. You take Chris Paul away, and that team's in the lottery again. I mean, you got to look at how many years has Devin Booker been in the league? 6 years or so now. I mean,
going on
just
Six
like
seven. Yeah,
years.
yeah. He was 19 when he came in. He was putting up all those gaudy numbers, and they were winning 30 games. So, like I said, he had a game where everybody raved about it. Ooh, he scored 70 points. He scored 70 points. They lost that game that he scored 70 points in. That's the part they don't ever tell you about. And he scored 70 points in the game they lost. He's always been the guy who put up numbers. What I'll say is the biggest problem, he's not a point guard. And before Paul got there, they were trying to make him that.
yep,
And think about it. He's not a guy that you want being the general, trying to be responsible for facilitating and getting everyone else involved. Think about it, when you're a superstar, that comes with the territory. Sometimes you have to be a playmaker for other guys. He's a guy that you want another point guard out there handling it, and you want him off the ball and just to shoot. When he's in a position where all he has to worry about shooting and scoring, then he's
He
fine.
lied.
But
Yeah.
right, but you don't want to put the responsibility of the team, the weight of the team on him. Where it's not only I got to worry about my scoring, but I got to make sure I get everybody else going too. He's not that guy, and that's the difference between being a good player and a superstar. He's a good player. He can score. Those Kobe Bryant comparisons were laughable.
yeah.
Very.
That was
That's
ridiculous.
that's the point. Like people were saying, like don't give him that because Kobe put up 84 one night because he come back and put up 70. A lot of good players put up 60. 63,
Yeah,
60.
David Robinson put up
David Robinson
71.
had 71 in the
You
game.
know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? A
Yeah.
lot of players. He's not the only one that ever did it. So you can't. He's a good player. I'm not taking away from his
David
skill.
Thompson scored 73 with the Denver Nuggets
Yeah,
so, years
yeah.
ago. Dr. J scored 63 in the game with
game.
Sixers. So.
Jordan put up 60.
Jordan scored 69 in the game. And this is before he started winning championships. This is back when the Bulls were just in.
I
Yeah.
think it was what, 1990. He scored the 69 against
The
the
Cleveland Cavaliers.
Cavaliers. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, most of the time when a guy's scoring those kind of points, usually their team is because when Kobe scored 81, the Lakers barely made the playoffs that year. They were
Yep.
like a seventh seed.
Seven
They were a
seed.
seventh seed. Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, most of the time when you're in a situation where your team is not that good, that's the reason you had to score so many points for them to win.
Yeah.
Because the thing about it, if you're on a good team, you're not going to have to score 70 points to win the game. You're not going to have to score 80 points for your team is good.
No.
So
CM
that's
said, "What about his euro?"
who?
CM said, "What about his euro?"
Yep.
Euro step or Euro? You talking about traveling or what?
I guess he's talking about euro step. The euro
He got away with
step.
it.
Koala in it. The Euro step. Hey, they don't call traveling in this league.
No.
Not now.
If they call traveling, James Harden will get called traveling for every time.
Oh yeah.
Every time James Harden shoot
Step back.
that step back three, he'll hold the ball, take 2 steps back, then dribble it and then shoot it. I'm like, come on, man. And Steve Nash carried the ball every time he drove the baseline. Steve Nash would carry the ball like he was carrying a baby in a cradle, and he would actually grab the ball, palm it with one hand, lift it up, take 2 steps, and put it back down on the floor. Yeah, I'm like, Phil Jackson's complaining about that when the Lakers were losing them in the first round. He's like, the dude carries the ball every possession.
Hell, even LeBron was doing it in front of the referee. He picked up the whole ball and started walking, and then dribbled again.
Yep. So they don't call traveling. Manu Ginobili's bad about carrying the ball too.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And they never. I mean, you can just sit there and just watch and just carry the ball right in front of the official, and you're like, come on, man! Like, how do you not see this?
Compared to what Iverson started, that's not Iverson. I don't really. I mean, that could have been a carry. Technically, I guess they called it traveling to carry it in, but I don't think that would. Compared to
Allen Iverson,
now, it's definitely not.
Allen Iverson's a great ball handler.
Yeah.
But to me, the best ball handler in the game, to me, is Kyrie Irving as far as his ball handler.
Yeah.
His handle, no matter how you feel about him, his ball handling, his handle is sick. Like his handle is reminiscent of a Penny Hardaway in his prime. That's how sick his handle is. Derrick Rose used to have a sick handle too back when he was in his heyday. Yeah. That's crazy, man. Both of them point guards out of Memphis, it was Memphis State when Penny Hardaway was there, but same school. Both Memphis Tiger point guards who were all NBA point guards in the NBA early in their career and were just debilitated by knee injury after knee injury. And one was an all NBA guard, the other one was a league MVP, and it's like, and neither were ever the same again after injuries. And both of them were Memphis Tigers. That's crazy how two players from the same school have such a similar fate with their careers.
And what I was gonna say, with that, I feel like another point guard that if he could actually get some decent handles. I mean, he got okay handles, not best. I think I know Steph is technically not a point guard.
He plays point guard, but
but if he got some better handles, he would be. He'd be okay.
And the thing that bothered me about they did a poll about guys with great handles. Steph was like finished third or whatever. I said, man, Steph is way too loose with the basketball.
He's not even third.
Nah, here's the thing about Steph. He's the best shooter that God has ever put on this earth. And for that, people give him a pass. But let me finish. People give him a pass and everything else, and they make this false narrative about him. So they want to say he has a great handle. No, he doesn't have a great handle. He just is the thing about he's not a good defender. He's only good at one thing. Here's the thing. He's so good at that one thing to where it supersedes all of his flaws, to where his shooting is so superior to where you live with all his other flaws because it's gonna supersede and override and overcompensate for any flaws that he have. However, that doesn't mean that we have to create this false narrative to say that he's good at these other things. He's not good at these other things, and it's okay because his shooting is so superior to where he doesn't have to be good at those other things because the value that he brings with the shooting supersedes what you lose with the other things, and that's okay. But people, since people like him because of the shooting, they try to create this false narrative about the other things. But when a guy shoots the ball like that, you'll live with whatever flaw he has.
Yeah.
But as far as pure point guard, when people tried, and when they were making a debate about greatest point guard of all time, some people were trying to say he's the greatest point guard of all time. I'm like, nah, he's the greatest shooter to ever play the point guard position or to play any position for that matter. But as far as pure point guard and doing the things that point guards do that's specific to point guard, and like being a floor general, getting other guys going and all that stuff, he doesn't compare to a Magic Johnson. But of course, he's a better shooter than Magic Johnson. But that's the only thing that he's better than Magic at, and that's shooting.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
and that's what he's better than anybody who's ever shot the ball as far as shooting. But shooting is just a part of basketball. He's a great player because of his superb superior shooting. But as far as pure point guard, no, he's not the greatest point guard ever because he doesn't really fulfill the role of a point guard. It's just that that's the position that he's playing, and he shoots the ball so well. It's just like if you put him at two guard, you wouldn't say the greatest two guard either, but he would be the greatest shooter at two guard. If you
Yeah.
put him in whatever position, he's going to be the greatest shooter at that position because he's the greatest shooter to ever live.
Right. Um. Yeah, I agree with it. I can't even argue with it. The shot, the shot is the only thing. Greatest shooter, like I said, the guy put on this earth, regardless of his handles. If it's going in, we can do it. I don't care.
And with Klay Thompson, he probably one of the three or four best shooters as far as shooters of all time. He might, if he's not second, he's still top five. Like
Oh yeah,
as far as I'm talking about shooters, I would
yeah,
say even top three. I mean, when you had that was the thing. Here's the thing about how the game's played now. You got everybody want to run up and shoot threes. The Golden State Warriors are the only team that won the championship doing that, and that's because they had you could say at least two of the greatest three shooters ever. One of them was the greatest shooter ever. The other one's the top three or four shooter ever. You got two of the three greatest shooters, maybe the two greatest shooters of all time in the same backcourt. Yes, you can win a championship like that because they shoot three at such a high efficient volume and percentage than anyone else in the league, to where they're the exception to the rule. But they can't be duplicated. And then they had great defensive teams overall. Green, excellent defender. Iguodala was excellent defender, and Klay Thompson himself is an excellent defender. So they were also an excellent defensive team as well with their superior shooting, and they were the exception to the rule. Then everyone else tried to copy that, and then when they added Durant, then it just wasn't even fair. And then because they won one championship like that, and then they added Durant in there, and at that point it was just like, okay, they got three of the five best players in the game, or at least three of the five of the top 10 players in all of professional basketball. At that point, they had no choice but to win. If they didn't win, the only reason they didn't win is because Durant ruptured his Achilles. So I mean, at that point, it's not even. You can almost say it's not even a fair fight. Because like the Houston Rockets tried it, Mike D'Antoni was trying that before Golden State did it, and it didn't work for Mike D'Antoni because they couldn't defend. The difference with Golden State is they even had better shooters and could defend, and that was the difference. And like I said, they're the only team that won a championship like that. Everyone else tried it and failed.
So we'll get into the off season, man. I'm ask the question now. Do you think Chris is coming back because he does have the player option?
I think he's going to exercise his option and try to get more money. I think he's going to opt out. Whether they agree to terms or not, I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if he ended up going back to New Orleans and seeing if he can, elevate Zion and all those guys and see if he could do the same type thing with them.
So you think that they pretty much think Lonzo's going to go somewhere else?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Well, a lot of the rumors that Lakers want him back.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, hearing the
I'd
Lakers.
take him back personally, in my opinion.
He's all right. He's all right.
Better. He got better.
Yeah, he's better.
Compared to Ben Simmons, he got a lot better.
But I hate that the Lakers let all that talent go. That's the thing with me. You had
Brandon Ingram.
Randall.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Zoe. I mean, Kuzma. That's the thing.
I
don't know if it's Kuzma or if it's LeBron. It might be Kuzma.
Kuzma and LeBron are both similar players in the fact they're ball dominant. Kuzma and LeBron always been on oil and water mix from the jump. Kuzma's not a bad player. Like Kuzma, he had a bad series against Phoenix. I do not deny that. He was god awful in that series. During the regular, but he was solid in the regular season. During the postseason last year, he was respectable. During the regular season last year, he was solid. His first 3 years in the league, he put up very good numbers.
Yeah.
If you put Kuzma, for example, if the Hornets did a deal, let's say if they did a deal where they traded, let's say Terry Rozier, which there was rumors about this too. That there might have been I think Terry Rozier for Montrezl Harrell and Kyle Kuzma. If I'm Charlotte Hornets, I take that in a heartbeat. You put Kuzma, yeah, you put that, and then with a point guard that can get him the ball like that, I think that would be an excellent. I think Kuzma can play. I just think he needs to get in a situation where he's not handicapped by playing with LeBron James. When you're a forward and playing with LeBron James, you have to be a spot-up shooter. That's why you see Anthony Davis standing there shooting so many threes. That's why you saw Chris Bosh standing in the corner shooting so many threes. You basically have to become a corner three guy when you're up front playing with LeBron because he's so ball dominant to where it's not going to be a fit. That's why they had to let Brandon Ingram go, because Brandon Ingram's also a ball dominant guy too. You couldn't have LeBron, Kuzma, and Ingram. They were all going to be in each other's way. And when it came down to who eats and who doesn't, LeBron eats first.
Oh, yeah, of course, he's gonna eat first.
And they got rid of all that talent to get Anthony Davis. I'll tell you one thing: if LeBron James retired, Anthony Davis ain't leading that team to nothing.
Yeah, I agree with that too. They're gonna have to get another piece next year or this year coming. They got to get somebody now.
If LeBron James tore his ACL right now, Anthony Davis becomes Kevin Love.
Yep.
Ooh.
Worse.
Ooh. Look.
Kevin Love. At least Kevin Love stayed healthy and played.
So what's the salary cap look like now?
The salary cap look like you don't want it to look for Lakers.
Yep.
Oh,
They gonna
can't get nobody.
You on thin ice.
Yeah, it looked like you don't want it to look. Bad. I figured that.
So
the point is they're gonna either have to trade somebody, and God honestly, I hate to say this, they're gonna have to probably tank somewhere down the line. You got well, in order to make a trade, you got to have something somebody wants. LeBron James and Anthony Davis are the only two players anybody who want on that team. Maybe a Kuzma. Nobody don't want Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I mean, Taylor Horton Tucker might be, and that's the one guy I kind of want to keep. But teams like, because he's a young prospect that might could be something. And I think the Lakers should keep Taylor Horton Tucker. Maybe even make him a starting two guard, but who knows? Matthews, they ain't gonna get nothing.
Bag potato chips.
Signed that 1 year deal. I think he's gonna leave and go somewhere
Dennis
else.
Schroeder ain't gonna get nothing.
Well, they offered him money, didn't they?
They offered him 4 years, $80 million. He wants I think he wants like 150. I was like, good luck.
He's not even worth that. He ain't worth 100. That'd just be real.
50.
Yeah, he ain't worth 50. You're right.
He's a decent player, but he ain't worth what he should take that 4 years, $80 million.
I was about to say he was stupid. I mean, I ain't gonna say the deal.
To me, he's one of those 6 man of the year type guys, not a guy that could be not a franchise cornerstone guy, but that guy who could be a Reggie Jackson 6 man of the year type.
Yeah. He's a Reggie. Yeah, he reminds me of
Reggie Jackson, Leandro Barbosa, those Eddie House, those kind of guys who could come off the bench and be maybe not Eddie House, but I'm talking about, but in the sense of like with the 6 man of the year type, like Reggie Jackson, Leandro Barbosa, Lou Williams, those guys who you bring off the bench and let them score, and
Jamal Crawford type players.
Yeah, that exactly. That's why I think he's better suited, not being a cornerstone point guard. Like I could see him going to, if they keep Chris Paul, if they had the money, let him be there to back up Chris Paul, and then when Chris Paul get to pulling his hamstrings and stuff, you got him to fall back on where you can use him in that role, and that gives him that depth. And where he could, and when Chris Paul needs rest, you won't miss a beat because he still gives you the offensive punch off the bench. I can see him in that particular role. I can see him maybe going to the Philadelphia 76ers and being a backup point guard there, or perhaps a starter. Because what's going to happen with Ben Simmons? Ben Simmons need to be moved to power forward. All you got to do is Ben Simmons could be the same type player that Giannis is because Giannis is not a shooter either. But if I'll move Ben Simmons to forward. I think that's what it should be
Yep.
anyway. I don't. They tried to make him a point guard, trying to be cute, trying to do the Magic Johnson thing. He's
It
six
didn't
foot ten.
work.
He said
He's a
he had
6'10". He's a 6'10" Bruce. He's a 6'10" brute force. What they need to have him doing is playing forward and need to isolate him out on the perimeter and let him just drive with aggression and let him drive. And when he gets and if he's double, drive and kick. But instead of because what's happening playing point guard takes away from his game because he's bringing the ball up the court, having to give the ball back up and get it back, and lots of times having to facilitate and be the floor general and have the weight of getting everybody else involved in the shoulders. When his role should be let him isolate and go to work. And if you move him off the ball, he could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think too, he has to want to learn how to shoot, man. I mean,
He's so arrogant.
I mean, that his attitude, his pride was going to kill him. I mean, if he goes anywhere else, I don't know if he's going to
He ain't going nowhere else. I don't think nobody want him.
Somebody take him.
It's
Somebody take him.
Somebody desperate enough to take him.
Yeah, if I was Charlotte Hornets, I'd take him and make him a power forward in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I said that too.
In a situation like that, yeah, but if he
In a
try to go in
heartbeat.
there and be like, I'm gonna be the point guard, that ain't gonna happen.
Well, now you got LaMelo Ball. LaMelo will get him so many easy baskets just off of alley oops and stuff. Man, if
pick and roll.
Man, if I was Charlotte right now, I'd say you could take Gordie Hayward, you could take Terry Rozier, and I throw Devontae Graham in it, and I throw this year's draft pick in it, and give him to me. I said, give him to me, and I said, I'll take Tobias Harris off of you too, just to have a shooter.
Yep, I say I was had to sweeten the deal with that. Give me him and Tobias Harris,
and I'll give you Gordie Hayward, Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, and my first round draft pick for this year, and I'll even do sweeten up and my first round draft pick for next year too, with no lottery protection.
Yeah,
I would even do that because I said if you got him, you won't need that pick.
But I see, we're gonna have to get something. Something's got to be picked up. Somebody's got to be traded because that ain't gonna work. I mean, next year, granted, with the injury bug, with the condensed season and all that, maybe next year, I just have to see how it goes.
Lakers don't have enough shooting, man. They don't have the floor spacing.
And LeBron went on 37 and is definitely he can't play that mileage like he used to anymore.
The minutes gonna get cut.
Yeah, Father Time is undefeated, man.
Yeah, I mean, not again. He's a great player at 37. He's a force. We won't turn in 37. Say that him and Chris Paul is or define their ages, but they can't.
Your body wear down after a while, man.
Yeah, all that. And LeBron is starting 2 of the last 3 years. The soft tissue, yeah, the growing injury 2 years ago, the ankle injury this year. It's just recovery time is seeming to take longer too. It's one of those things where I don't know how much you got. He ain't gonna break Kareem's record for all time in the score because I think it's getting down. He's already going into year 19. The last 2 seasons you had games that were taken away also because the season was shortened and missed games due to injury. He ain't breaking Kareem's record.
So he was second or third. He's still third. Yeah, he got to break Carl. I think he still need about 1,000 something to get Carl.
Well, I mean, it don't take a lot to get 1,000 points. I don't know exactly how many he need, but
and Kareem, I think it's another 3,000, 3 or 4,000 to get Kareem.
He gonna have to average about 25 points and play all 82 games like over the next 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That's gonna be kind of tough.
Considering the fact that he probably take load management like most players do now, and not play a game here and there.
Also, I think the scoring average it's gonna be hard to average 25 points a game when you're 19 and 20.
Yeah,
I mean, and then what's gonna happen? You got Davis there too. They're gonna be going to Davis more, trying to preserve James for the playoffs. I think he plays about 2 more years and he's done anyway.
Yeah,
because after a while of injuries, you don't want him to have that ruptured Achilles thing too, and that's what I'm getting worried about because I worry about that with him and Davis, but with him it's like last couple of years now, the soft tissue injuries are starting to add up, and then I'm wondering like at this point, do he feel like does he even have anything else to prove?
Right now, you really don't, unless you just really want that record that bad. You really don't have nothing else to prove.
And that playoff series against Phoenix, even after Davis went out, he played like a guy that had nothing to prove.
He played well, but he didn't go above and beyond. It's not like he was like, I'm gonna put this on my shoulders. It's just like, my man is out. This is what we got. Oh well.
You gotta look at it, looking at can I make another 2 years if I'm go out here and play my butt off and risk hurt myself even worse?
No, what he gonna try to do is try to get a third superstar in there, and then that way his scoring will go down anyway because he wants Damian Lillard and Paul and all those guys, but
But I don't think that's gonna help the situation. Damian Lillard, now granted he can shoot, but he's not the greatest shooter in the world. Now he'll miss more than he makes.
man, when he gets hot, he can shoot. He can shoot
Yeah,
from
when he
half
get
court.
hot, I get that he get hot, he'll shoot, but he can miss a
You got
lot like James Harden too.
and he's a better shooter than James Harden.
Sure.
No, yeah, he better shoot than James Harden. And James
Sure.
Harden, James Harden spent a lot of his time gyrating and kicking his legs out and living at the free throw line. The dude got a timeshare at the free throw line.
He's
James Harden is when if they change those rules to where they call it an offensive foul when you jump into the guy while you're shooting the three, he gonna foul out a lot of games next year. Because this
Yeah,
dude, this SOB will be. I could be standing 10 feet from the SOB. He's standing behind the 3 point line. He goes up to shoot. He jumps into and lean his shoulder into me. I'm standing where I was at the whole time. He jumps 2 step. He jumps 3 feet forward, with shoulder first into me, and then they call me for a foul and put him in line for 3 free throws. I'm like, come on, man. And he does it all the time. Like, I don't think he's great at all. I think he's a good offense. I think he's a good scorer, but he
yeah.
chokes. He even and this year was back with Durant again and choked again. In that game 7, he went 5 of 23 from the field in that game 7 against Milwaukee. And then
that's
then
about
he
his
got another.
average, ain't it?
He's the biggest
But he
playoff choke artist. I'll say that right there. In this time, he's the biggest playoff choke artist. When
yeah
you need him,
he does it every year. And the one time they're talking about he was too tired from playing so many minutes during the season. That's bull crap.
That's
Guys like
crap.
Michael Jordan played 82 games every year. I don't want to hear it. Even LeBron typically plays 80. I'm talking about when he's healthy.
yeah.
Plays most of the games, at least about 79 to 80 games a year. So I don't want to hear it. I
If
don't
you
want to
think
hear it
about
at all.
it, Jordan played almost 100 games every year, considering that you get to the playoffs, the finals on a consecutive basis for
And
the
give
first.
LeBron credit. And give LeBron credit. So does he. So I mean,
Yeah,
I don't. So I don't want to hear it about James. So I don't want to hear it with the James Harden thing. So did Kobe Bryant in his prime. So I don't want to. I don't want to hear that. And so this is just an excuse to make. And as far as does low maintenance really work? Ask Kawhi Leonard. I'm about to say he still got hurt anyway.
Yep.
yeah. And now when he
Kawhi,
come back, next he coming back to the Clippers next year.
wait, he tore his ACL. So whenever he come back, it'll probably January or February sometime because
Yeah.
that's at least 9 months. He had surgery for torn ACL. So. And
Well, I'm saying,
you know he's not going to come back a minute early.
no,
When
he's not.
he takes his recovery days like he take every single day. The doctor tell him don't. I don't want anybody to ever accuse Kawhi Leonard of trying to play hurt.
So I've been saying, I was like, so what I'm saying is like, do you think he'll do what he did in San Antonio? Like after he had got injured that year with the dirty play by Zaza, what's it Zaza Pachulia?
Zaza Pachulia, and that was a dirty play. But
Yeah.
Zaza
Um,
Pachulia,
do you think that he'll take the same road and probably
you
bounce
know,
out eventually?
it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if he went in with Miami Heat. Here's the thing: when
Yep.
they sign him, what the Miami Heat do the Kevin Durant thing with Brooklyn, sign him knowing they're not really going to have him that much next year, but just go with Jimmy Butler and get to the playoffs, and then have him the next year with him and Butler. That should be a very good defensive tandem.
Oh yeah, defense wise, yeah.
So it'd be similar to him and George that tandem. I can see the Miami Heat. Riley will go after him. I can see that. I can see that. Or maybe he recovers faster than we think, and he ends up back by Christmas or something. I don't know, but he had surgery in June, so June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. You still talking about February? You still talking about after All Star by the time he's back. He ain't gonna
Yeah.
play next year. He one of them guys. Unless he 110%, he ain't playing.
Now the Western
Just
Conference gonna be pretty interesting starting next year. I like to see what the contendership look like going into next year. I don't see
what
Phoenix pushing it like they did this year.
well, depending on who they have on the roster, but
I think Chris Paul's gonna. I think he's jumping. I really think.
well, you think he's going to another team?
I think so, man. Like I don't. I mean, I think they might be more attracted to try to get somebody else to come in where they don't have to pay all that money to.
What unless it's a pure point guard who can facilitate,
Yeah,
then without him, I don't even think they're playoff team. Even with them next year, I think there's going to be some drop off to where they might be a 6 seed or something like that, a six
yeah,
or 7 seed anyway, because depending on who else gets better and all that as well. You got to realize this year a lot of teams got off to a slow start. Like I feel like Dallas Mavericks would be better than what they were. They got off to a slug. A lot of teams got off to a sluggish
yeah.
start coming back
Memphis,
on the.
Memphis will
I think
probably
Memphis
be
gonna be
in
the
there too.
surprise out of the West next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but you could argue that even in the East or whatever, some of these teams, like I feel like Philadelphia a bounce back. I feel like Milwaukee should still be good. I feel like who's the
No,
second
well, I
seed?
know Milwaukee still hold their little
What
spot
do you think about
between
the
2 and
Hawks?
5.
I think the Hawks would probably be like a 7 seed.
Charlotte got to
I,
get in there this year.
I think Charlotte will get them. The injuries cost them this year. Their trainer and their dumb coach.
No, go
Um,
ahead and speak your mind, baby. This is adult TV.
yeah, but sometimes I have family and stuff to listen, and somebody from church might be listening. So,
Yeah, yeah.
well, my
Injuries,
pastor might listen. So
injuries, and Brago is again.
we got to fire our trainer. Because I mean, every time someone twists their ankle, they're out like 2 months. I'm like, come on now.
Dang,
Yeah, I mean,
that
even
bad.
they had stretches where Devontae and Terry was out a good bit too. And what you call it?
You know, Balls was a freak accident when he broke his wrist.
Yeah,
He'll be fine. I ain't worried about him.
yeah,
He's the guy. So
yeah,
first of all, Devontae Graham won't even be there next year. He gonna sign somewhere else. Somebody gonna pay him. I would trade Rozier not because he's bad. I would trade him because he's good. The thing is, he's a
You
guy
can
that
get
you can get out.
you can get something pretty decent for
yeah.
Rozier though.
Right now, he got
Right,
4 years left on his contract at 19 million. You know the Hornets are not going to pay him more.
right. And furthermore, in today's NBA, 19 million is pretty affordable. Some team would take that on. Let's say a team like the Clippers. I'm just using that for example. They'll take a guy like that to be their top six man. That
Or,
shooter. Or a team like Milwaukee who's trying to repeat. They'll take a guy like that to give him that extra punch. A team like Philadelphia, I'll take a guy like that. I'm just using those teams as an example. The Brooklyn Nets, whoever it may be, the Boston Celtics might would take him back. My thing is, he's a guy. The Dallas Mavericks. He's a guy the Lakers. He's a guy that teams would love to have. And the thing about it, his stock is at an all-time high, and I think he overplayed his ability last year. I don't think he's going to be as efficient. This is the most efficient year. He shot about 48% from the field and shot about 41% from three, whereas the career like 38% shooter just overall from the field. The thing is, get rid of him while he has value because the stock I feel like will go back down. Right now, he's maximized his value to where you can get something back for him. He's the asset where you can get something for, and that's why I wouldn't trade him because he's bad. I would trade him because he's good.
yep.
Yeah.
What do you think about Spencer deal with him?
What do I think about him?
Yeah.
He's a guy. He plays in the NBA. Didn't he's played for the Nets back in the day, didn't he?
No.
I think does he still play with him? Oh, he gone. He's still there.
Yeah, he's still there.
Oh, he's a guy. I don't have nothing against him. He seems like a nice young man.
I'm
Huh?
just feeling you. I just want
No,
to.
you good. You good. Ask me some more. I'm like,
I'm not
he's
getting opinions. I'm just getting
he's
opinions. There's
he's
nothing.
yeah, shoot some other names out there. I'm like Spencer's. I'm sure he's a good fellow.
I'm just. Well, I guess where I'm going at more so. I'm just trying to think. The Hornets need a 2 guard.
Yeah, but they need help up front. They need help up front.
They're definitely a big man, but
And maybe they could take a guy. They could just sign a guy like Kentavious Caldwell Pope to a marginal deal, and he can. I'm not saying Kentavious Caldwell Pope's an all-star, but he's still a legitimate starting 2 guard in the NBA,
Yeah.
and he's a good defender as well. 6'5", good athlete, good defender, capable knockdown shooter. Still has championship experience. Been in some big games. You could. He's a free agent. I think this year. He's only about 28 years old. You could sign him to like a 1 year, $12 million deal, or 1 year, $15 million deal, or maybe a 2 year, $26 million deal or something like that, with an option, with a player or team option for the second year or something like that. And you can that can fill your two guard need, and then you can deal Rozier if you're going to deal with the Lakers. I might would take him up on that Kyle Kuzma Montrezl Harrell thing, where you could either start Harrell or let Harrell be your sixth man and give you that scoring punch, that front court guy. He's a guy from North Carolina. Anyway, I actually used to talk to a girl that's his cousin. Um, he's from North Carolina, like from around Tarboro area or something like that, or Rocky Mountain, some of them areas like that. I'm Eastern North Carolina.
Kevin six.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Kyle Kuzma's actually a talented player. He just had a bad postseason, but his total body of work supersedes those 6 games against Phoenix. And so still 25 years old, a guy who can handle the ball like a guard, but who can post up like a big 6'9". He could also shoot from the outside. A guy who can create off the dribble, a guy who can drive. He has the ability, and you put that excellent point guard there who could get him the ball in good position, get him easy buckets. That might be a deal that you make. I think you become exponentially better that
What
way.
about the guy from Portland? I think he's pretty decent.
Who
I think he's a center. Is he a center? Yeah, I think he's a
European?
center.
You're talking Nurkic, the European guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nurkic. Yeah, he's pretty decent.
Nurkic is a good player. If he's just available, well, I got a feeling CJ McCollum probably gonna be available for trade because if Lillard is gone, then McCollum ain't gonna stay either. He gonna go some. I'm not saying Charlotte should get McCollum, but I'm saying he going somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going somewhere. Hell, I'll take him.
He's 6'3". I mean, so you kind of like he and Lillard was kind of like the poor man's Isaiah and Dumars thing, where they're trying to what you kind of got, but
Yeah, about the defense.
yeah, I agree with that last part you said. McCollum's gonna end up somewhere.
What about Rashawn Holmes?
I'm not being funny, but I honestly don't know who that is, and I'm not being facetious.
He's like a power forward / center for the Kings. I know he's been getting a lot of hype. I'll say hype.
I don't watch Sacramento Kings. I don't like the SOBs. I don't watch that, and I don't like their coach Luke Walton. I ain't that crazy about De'Aaron Fox. I didn't even know anybody that was on their team. I'll tell you someone I wouldn't mind having, and this is more of a role player thing. I wouldn't mind having a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein. And I know,
oh yeah,
and I know people listening like Willie Cauley-Stein. He's a role player. He's gonna only give you about 6 points and 6 rebounds. I said, but in the minutes that he plays, he's gonna give you his all. He's gonna crash the boards. He's gonna play with authority around the basket. He's gonna defend. He's gonna set good screens. He's gonna show them pick and rolls. The thing about it, I wouldn't mind having him as a starting center, but Willie Cauley-Stein prefers to come off the bench. But one thing about it, he's a guy that'd be a great enforcer on a championship team. Like that dirty work guy, that Charles Oakley guy, and I know he never won the title, but you get my point. Those guys who get gritty, and like your Horace Grants and guys like that who get gritty and do the dirty work. He's kind of one of those kind of guys who don't mind getting a little grimy. I wouldn't mind having. He adds that element of toughness. I wouldn't mind having a Charles Oakley or like a Nerlens Noel. And I know these are not sexy names or guys who are going to be on anybody's Sports Center highlights, but when you're trying to become a playoff team, you got to have those gritty, tough, versatile defenders. Nerlens Noel could defend pick and rolls and stuff too, and he also plays around the glass with authority. You got to be able to defend the basket. You got to be able to defend the pick and roll, and you got to have athleticism to run the floor well and be able to switch as well. And those are the type guys who are capable of doing those things. That make sense. You can't have guys like Cody Zeller and think you're gonna and think you're gonna be successful.
Shout out to Cody Zeller. Hey, your boy played last night with the Suns. I didn't know he was on the Suns.
Yeah, and played well in the last night. Frank Kaminsky.
Yeah.
Me and my Uncle Smooth, we were talking about that last night. He said my Uncle Smooth was like, Monty probably should have kept them boys playing Charlotte in there a little bit longer. It was like, look at
He
Frank
played good
Kaminsky.
last night to come in the little minutes that he played.
Sure did. I think a lot of people sometimes they get when with the people that we're talking about, they get caught up and they look at their stats and say, "Oh, well, they only averaging this and that." And a lot of times you got to look at the minutes as well. You got to look at how efficient are these guys being in the minutes that they're given.
That they're playing,
So like,
yeah.
yeah. So when I look at a Nerlens and well, he may average 6 points and 6 rebounds or something like that. But if you look at the minutes that he played, he was effective and efficient in the minutes that he played when he was on the floor. So because like I said, Shaquille O'Neal's not going to fall right into our lap, and Shaquille O'Neal's probably not going to fall into our lap and be a starting center. So what you want a starting center who can be effective, who can on the glass defend and defend pick and rolls and set good screens and be a good athlete, and a guy it will help to have for him to be a capable shot maker. Like I know a lot of people keep throwing out the name Andre Drummond.
Mhm.
I think he's talented, but he doesn't impact the game.
Nope.
He
Um,
don't.
he played. He played in Detroit. Yeah, he put up points and rebounds. Didn't impact the game. Played in Cleveland a handful of games. Didn't impact the game. Played with the Lakers. Didn't impact anything at all. And that's because he and Anthony Davis, that was an oil and water thing, in each other's way. So
Well, when you think about the teams that you name here, he pretty much was the only rebounder they probably had.
that is true. Now, if you put him in a situation with Charlotte with a point guard like what we have, then I
Yeah.
wouldn't sign. Don't sign him to some ridiculous 5 year, $125 million
Oh
deal.
no.
Don't like nothing's crazy like that. But if you can get him like on a like I say 2 years, 30 million or something like that. Yeah, I roll with that.
That's fair enough. He
I
worth
see.
that.
You gotta earn it, man. I mean, I mean, he didn't do that great in Cleveland. I mean, he
Well,
put
he only played like a handful of games.
games, yeah. I mean, like you say, it's all in the oil and water thing in
With the Lakers, and
Yeah,
he
I
Lakers.
knew
got to,
that
he
shit was
got,
gonna be.
he,
I
but
knew it wasn't gonna work like I thought it would. When they was like, "Oh,
well,
Andre Drummond coming to Los Angeles," that
you
shit hit.
got to, but you got to understand, man. Everybody was hurt when he got there. They were already James and Davis were both out at the time that Drummond got there, and then when they got back, they're trying to incorporate pieces that hadn't played together on the fly. You got James and Davis limping, and then you got a guy who hadn't played basketball in 2 months, and you bring him in there, and then you're trying to mix all these, develop chemistry between all these guys, and he hadn't played with any of those guys, and then it's like, all right, we're back, find a way to fit. That's a very tough situation. He wasn't put in a great situation. Anytime you get somebody off a contract buyout, the best that they could be is what Blake Griffin was with the Nets. That's the best case scenario when you pick up somebody off a buyout.
Or even hate to say it, even with Clippers, Nick Batum.
But here's the difference with Nick Batum. Nick Batum didn't have no bad season with the Clippers, but you got to understand his role returned to like what it was when he played with Portland. At that point,
Absolutely.
Nick Batum is an excellent passer and a good shooter. In Charlotte, with the money that he was making, he was expected to be one of the cornerstone players, which is not as though he had a good season in which on a contract year and got a big payday. And that time he got the big payday, that wasn't a bad move because that was the year that everybody got those $150 million deals. That was
Oh
the
yeah.
inflated market. So he had a great contract year at the right time when the market was inflated. That was when people like DeMar Carroll were getting $80 million and stuff.
Hmm.
So at that point, guys were just getting astronomical deals that offseason, that 2016 offseason. He cashed in at the right time, but when he cashed in at that time, now it was like, now you're one of our cornerstones. You're supposed to be one of our franchise cornerstones. That's not his role. His role is to be a solid role player. You put Nick Batum, like I said, with the Clippers, he plays well. You put Nick Batum with the
Nets.
Brooklyn Nets, he plays well. You got to realize at that point, all he has to do is be a good facilitator and a spot up shooter. And that's all that's asked of him. Whereas with the Hornets, it's like, we're asking you, if Kimba ain't got it going, is you got to be the man. It's going to be Kimba and then you. So if Kimba ain't got it rolling, if Kimba's out with a sprained ankle, if Kimba fouls out the game, if Kimba twists his ankle or something like that, all right, it's all on you. Carry this team, and that's not his role.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is the position that a guy's put in and what the expectations are. In Charlotte, the pay and the expectations that he had didn't align with his abilities and his personality. Whereas with the Clippers, he's a secondary guy who's a complementary guy to what they already have. All he has to do is be a piece to the puzzle.
This is brought to you by Syncord.
Yeah.
I was like,
he's the main reason why.
Yeah.
But
hey, don't, hey, Michael Jordan. At least the last year or so they've tried to get better. I
they're
think Mitch,
better. They're better.
he's let me. I think he trusts Mitch.
Oh yeah, Richard
And
Sherman's just a clown, man. I hate to say it.
yeah, he's a guy that looks at measurables like vertical jump, and he's kind of like one of them
Mitch
NBA
kept
scouting
saying,
combine kind of guys. You know how like scouting combine like guys like Troy Williams that get drafted because they ran a blazing 40, but they couldn't play receiver. He's kind of one of those guys that look at what you do in drills and stuff and draft because you can run and jump instead and look at your potential based on your tape. And that was ish. I'm
Mitch
I'm
kept saying,
I'm no Rich Show, and I'm not gonna rip
oh,
on Michael Jordan too hard because I don't I doubt if Dominique Jordan's listening because I mean she ain't never listened before, but she is my friend on Facebook, and I went to college with her, and she was always cool. So just because I have no problem with her, I'm not gonna talk junk about her uncle on the podcast.
No, I feel you.
But I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, all the criticisms that he's had in the past, I mean, they were deserved. But I think
Yeah,
now
look,
at this point, I think he's allowed, and I took that personally. I think he's allowing Mitch to do his job. Hey,
absolutely.
you should pull the one up where he was laughing at Gary Payton.
Yeah,
I gotta find out. I think
Yeah,
I
when he
still
was
got
like,
that on here.
yeah, that was funny. When Gary Payton told us something, when they put me on them the series change too. he's like, he's like, he's like, I
The
didn't have any
glue.
problem with the glove. I was like, God, I just busted out laughing. So
He's like
he said,
the glue.
he's like, I had no problem with the glove.
He said the glove.
He just straight dog Gary Payton.
I think he was more when he said he really wasn't really worried about him. He was more mad at was George Carl that speak to him at dinner, and
yeah.
that's what pissed him off.
But that was crazy, man. Because I don't like George Carl. By the way, I think George Carl's a closet racist, and yes, I said it. Go ahead though. Some of the things he said, like in his book, like when he talked about Kenya Martin, when he said that Kenya Martin is a victim of young African American male who grew up with without having father figures in their life and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
and I remember one time he was talking about Doc Rivers when he said something along the lines that joins the line of African Americans or Negroes who gets a shot at head coaching jobs without any coaching experience. So, yeah, he said a lot of things, and in his autobiography, his memoir, whatever that he wrote, he said a lot of distasteful things about some of his former players, and a lot of distasteful things were connected to or things that insinuated that whatever negative attributes they had were linked to their blackness. And there are a lot of undertones in his autobiography where he's connecting the disdain, dislike, negative opinions of some of his former players, where he's connecting it or insinuating that the reason that whatever he feels negative about them is linked to or contributed to or contributed by or caused by their blackness. And a lot of his former players don't like him, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. And I think some of the things he said will prevent him from being in the Hall of Fame. And I honestly don't think that George Cole is a good guy. So yes, I said that. That's how I feel about George Karl. The last time he coached Sacramento Kings back like in 2015. He coached them for like 12 games. They brought him in there towards the end of the season, and because they fired whoever was coaching them, I don't forgot now, some Maloney or some guy like that. They fired him. Well, Reggie Theus had him for like a week or two, and then that Maloney guy had him. Then they brought in George Karl, and then by Christmas or so the next season they fired him, or a few games in they fired him, and that's when he started hearing more stuff. So I think it's safe to say that George Karl would never be a head coach in National Basketball Association again.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just like what's his name, Sterling will never be an owner.
Donaldson, yeah, at his age or whatever, after a while, I mean, he'll be in glory or wherever.
He was like 80 when all that happened, right?
Right, that's been like 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think being an owner is, he made like $1 billion off that sale anyway, so a couple billion I think. So he ain't tripping.
We ain't hurting for no money.
And even with the Donald Sterling thing, that got blown. Don't get me wrong, for all my black friends, I'm a pro black guy, but hear me out. He didn't do anything that any other rich man his age. He didn't say anything that any other rich man his age had probably said. The difference is the videotape, the recording got
Yep.
out.
Yeah.
He, yeah, I mean
He
that's
just
all.
got
I'm about to
caught.
say, yeah, he got caught. I thought what happened? Magic Johnson got to crying about it.
Surprise.
Here's the thing. I didn't like what he said. What he said was ugly, and I know how I feel about black people based on what he said. But it's not like he was discriminating, saying that black people, not like he was barring black people from getting tickets or anything like that. It was in a personal conversation with his mistress where he was telling her that he didn't want her hanging out with other black people and didn't want her inviting
Yeah.
them to the game. Don't get me wrong, that is a disgusting mindset to have, and I think that he's a horrible human being. However, being a horrible human being doesn't mean that his right to be an owner of a franchise should have been taken from him. And what people got to understand, that was in a private conversation. It's not like there were any no known. It's not like that translated to any known or reported business practice where he was having discriminate that we know of, like preference that we know of or that's been reported. It's not like there've been any reported, validated racist business practices that we are aware of that have been taking place. That was a personal conversation he was having with a woman he was having an extramarital affair with about who he wanted her associating with. I'm not understanding what that had to do with how he does his job and what he does as a businessman. And I thought this was when Magic Johnson cried about it. To me, that was kind of the genesis of cancel culture, where even though I think what he said was disgusting, still his rights to have his opinion in private is another thing. And just like someone else took it and recorded, it's just like this. Me, you, and anybody else, we've all said something at some point in private that if someone heard it, they would have been offended, no matter what it is, no matter how mild it is. I've said something that if it had been recorded and brought out to the public, somebody would be offended. You have, and so have you. And the people that are listening, every single person who walks this earth has said something at some point in private that if somebody else would have heard it, would have been offended by. And if someone were to record it and put it out, we wouldn't feel like that we deserve to lose our livelihood because of it. So that bothers me when somebody says something in private and somebody records it and leaks it out, and a person loses their profession over it. Even if it's something that I don't like, I think we should be able to say that, hey, I don't like this person, and I'm not going to do business with this person because I don't like this person because of their stance. However, I'm not going to try to rob them of their right to still have this profession. It's just that I'm not going to do business with them because I know where they stand.
Yeah. I think he got set up. I mean, unfortunately, like I said.
He's not a good man. Don't get me wrong. He's
Yeah,
not a
yeah,
good man.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would not want to do business with him. I would not want to work for him, or I would because we know where he stands and we know how he feels. But at least one thing about it, we now know where he stands. It's not like we have to guess.
No, he ain't got to guess. I mean, obviously, it's not a surprise. He's not the only one out here that's doing this. So he just
Yeah, it's
got
just
caught. He just
right,
got caught.
right,
Simple enough. Even though it doesn't glorify it any better, he just got caught.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like an 80-year-old billionaire made some racially insensitive statements, and we're acting like this is unheard of.
Y'all
Like,
acting like the word bigot don't even exist. Damn, that's what it is.
A,
Bigotry.
narcissistic.
yep,
Racism.
yep. And then after Magic was the one that kind of cried about it, then he went shooting at Magic, talking, making even distasteful statements about Magic's health status and all that too,
Yeah.
which was
Well,
out
hell,
of line.
Carmelo does that.
Karl
He,
Malone used to they got cool. Him and Carl and Magic done squashed all that,
Yeah.
but that was back in like when in the '90s when Magic was trying to come back, and Carl was like, I'm not gonna be diving hard for no loose ball if he's guarding me, because he said, what if I hit him and he get cut? No, I'm like, and but let's put some context with it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that was okay to say, but Carl said that in 1992 when it comes to Magic's health situation, the knowledge and the understanding of Magic's health situation at that time.
Nobody knew. Yeah.
Right. My point is, it's not at the level that it is now. A lot of things that we know now, like we know that you're not you're gonna like Magic could pass his ailment on to you from playing basketball with him. We know that now, but back then, people genuinely didn't know that because it was
Yeah.
still considered relatively new. I'm
Knew.
talking about on a large scale to the public, so people didn't know. So it's kind of we're a lot of people. What bothers me is when we take stuff that people said in the past, yesteryear, when society had different standards, but we'll evaluate transgressions of the past on today's standards. When we evaluate transgressions of the past, I think they should be evaluated on the standards then, because if the standards were different then, that means that the tolerance was different. Whereas it's unfair to judge or evaluate something from back in the past based on today's standards, where we have a more heightened sensitivity to certain things than we had in the past. Whereas now, if you say something now that doesn't fall in today's standards, then of course you're going to be evaluated on today's standards and going to suffer the consequence of today's standards, which no matter how harsh it is, that's still reasonable because those standards have now been established and you're saying these things knowing what the standards are. However, you shouldn't be punished. Like if I say something today, 20 years from now, I don't know what the standards are going to be 20 years from now. So if I say something that's considered acceptable today, it's unfair for you to for 20 years in the future for you to go back with the benefit of hindsight and then punish me for something I said when it was acceptable at the time I said it. It's just like, for example, if something was legal in 2010 but it's illegal now, if I did it in 2010 back when it was legal, you can't go back and prosecute me today for something I did hypothetically did in 2010 that was legal at the time but illegal today. So if you can't do that, the same logic should be applied to the court of public opinion as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I can see that.
we're so perverse in catching someone in the act, whatever the act may be. We're so perverse and so infatuated with scandal. It's like we're so perverse and finding and highlighting someone's imperfections to where many times we go looking for something to be insulted about. And the thing about it, if you're looking for trouble, God knows you're gonna find it. If you wake up in the morning looking to be offended by something, it ain't gonna be hard because you're already looking for it. If you're looking for dirt, all you gotta do is dig. The dirt
There
will
you
be
go.
there.
There it
That's
is.
what. That's all you gotta do. But the thing about it, I don't wake up in the morning looking for dirt. I wake up in the morning looking to be happy. I'm looking for good news. I'm looking for something joyous. Like that old gospel song, "Good News to Tell You." Now, I'm looking for that good news.
We have reached the hour and 37-minute mark. Um, I'm gonna give y'all the flow. We're gonna start with T Harden. You got your final remarks.
Yeah, what I want to say is, man, given the turmoil that's happening in society when it comes to public health and how not only does it impact the lives of people, but on a lighter note, has impacted sports. Last year didn't even look like we were gonna have a finals. They had to do the thing in the bubble, and a good chunk of the year, you didn't have any people in the stands. So even going back to the NFL season, most of the games were played in empty stadiums or minimal capacity stadiums. Wrestling shows like AEW only having like 500 people. WWE having the Thunderdome with the LED monitors. So when I watch Monday Night Raw, when I watch AEW Dynamite, and I see an arena full of people now. When I watched the Super Bowl, we were able to at least get some about 40% capacity or something there. When I'm watching the NBA Finals and I'm hearing the crowd scream out defense and things like that, it's a solid reminder of you don't know what you have until it's gone. It was the regular things, even when it comes to life and sports, that we thought were granted that we would think of as just second nature, would never even imagine not being with us. We saw what it was like when those things were taken from us, and I think lessons to be learned here is that you don't wait till tomorrow, because the thing about it, you don't wait till next year, because over the last year and a half, we've seen how next year was taken from us. I'm almost done, but what I want to say, for example, even when we go back to like Anson football and Coach Jackson, I'm sure you would agree with this if you're listening. Like, well, after what happened in 2019, where we were robbed of an opportunity, no matter whose fault it was, whatever, it still happened, and the situation was avoidable. And it was one of those things where had we avoided the situation, we wouldn't have been in that situation. And a lot of people would have thought, well, like he said, that we were well on our way to having just as good of a team next year, and you would have thought we're like, well, we'll be back next year. Then guess what? There was no next year, and so it's a reminder that you that certain things you just can't wait till tomorrow. You can't assume that you can handle it tomorrow. If it could be handled, you take care of it while you can handle it, while you know it's at hand. Never assume that you're gonna have everything tomorrow that you had today. So if you have the opportunity to take something to take care of business, whether it's winning a championship, whether it's getting better in yourself, whatever the case may be, um, take care of the business at hand because when you wait till tomorrow, you may be in a situation where tomorrow or next year gets taken from you like it was from us the last year and a half.
Salutes, man. That was deep.
Yeah.
Deep wrong.
I would say, kind of piggyback a little bit, seeing these finals, it was good to see the crowds and everything. So it's now I would say it's more exciting to see what's coming with sports, especially now that everything seems to be back to normal. So with the upcoming draft and then the NFL season, it's definitely going to be more good things to come. Hopefully, we'll definitely have a lot more topics, and actually looking forward to next week, especially with the draft coming up. So, yeah, it's good things to come. It's coming, football season, draft. Just, just thankful, and just shout out to my wife. I was as well, having a successful delivery. So I have my son. So just
Congratulations.
looking
Oh,
forward to
yeah.
these new things coming up for us. So
All right. Salutes. I'm gonna say this. It's good to see people back to somewhat of a normal society. We've been in a pandemic for uh 15 plus months, probably longer than that, maybe. Um, it's good to see the world kind of like opening back up because you understand a lot of things when you're inside and there's nothing going on, you're just isolated, can't go nowhere, everything's closed. You start thinking on a lot of things, start looking at, different scenarios in life, and uh, it taught me a lot. I could say that being in the pandemic taught me that, you never you don't understand the small things are so much appreciated until like when they're taken away. You just it's, whether it be sports, activities they like going out or something of that nature. When it's taken away, you don't realize how much you should appreciate things like that, like Tyrell said. And I feel as though people should take the small things and appreciate them just as they were big things. Because, like you said, when they gone, you don't know if they coming back tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. Because this world is a lot different than it was when we were younger. I put it that way. The world has changed. It's so dramatically in the last, I'd say, 20 some years of my life. When last, I say last 10 years, the world's changed quite a bit. Uh, but I'm just thankful to be here. Some people didn't get that opportunity due to this pandemic. Something that they didn't cause and they couldn't control. But and I also appreciate these frontline workers out here that put their lives on the line every day dealing with the pandemic as well. I mean, we ain't out the woods yet, but it's good to kind of see that uh, America's kind of pulling itself back together slowly. But again, I always be appreciative of the small things in life because when they're gone or they've been taken away from you, you'll never understand the significance of not having something. And
So
that's all I
true.
got to say. So,
That
fellas, I enjoyed it, man. We're gonna probably go live next week on our normal schedule, on Thursdays. I think it'll be around the time of America's Goodwill Games.
Oh,
All right, man. I'll see you
Yeah.
then.
All right, man. Y'all have
all
a
right,
good one, man.
fellas. Have a blessed evening.
All right,
You too, my
everybody
brother.
out there. Peace out, man. I appreciate y'all for pulling up, and y'all take care till next time.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Likewise. Good evening.